The money story you keep telling, and how Neville says to change it, is not just a phrase. It is the key to uncovering the hidden narrative that has silently shaped every financial choice, decision, and limitation you have ever experienced. And in this video, you will discover how to consciously rewrite that story to awaken wealth, freedom, and ease into your life in ways you may never have imagined before. This is where it begins, with the realization that every thought you have ever whispered about money, whether aloud or silently, has been scripting the reality that surrounds you. This is how it unfolds, as layers of inherited beliefs, social conditioning, and repeated fears are peeled back to reveal the subconscious blueprint that governs your financial world. This is where truth breaks through, showing that scarcity is not external, and poverty is not destiny, but the consequence of a story that no longer serves you. This is why it matters, because when you change the narrative in your mind, the universe itself rearranges to reflect that transformation. This is where illusion fades, exposing the subtle but relentless ways you have been affirming lack through words, feelings, and silent assumptions. This is the turning point, as you realize that imagining the end of abundance is not daydreaming, but a deliberate act of creation, recognized by the mind, body, and the unseen currents of life. This is where focus sharpens, highlighting how the simplest inner dialogues hold the power to manifest wealth far beyond effort or struggle. This is the revelation, showing that every instance of worry, complaint, or envy has been a misalignment with the reality you could be living in now. This is the awakening, as you begin to sense that money is first a feeling, first a consciousness, and only then a tangible exchange of currency. This is the method where Neville's teachings on living in the end guide you to feel the satisfaction, the success, and the security as though they are already present. This is the key, demonstrating that your imagination is the true bank account from which all abundance flows, and the deposits you make emotionally are what generate material results. This is the alignment, where the inner self and outer world begin a dance of perfect synchronicity as you hold the assumption of prosperity. This is the proof, as subtle coincidences, unexpected opportunities, and effortless solutions begin appearing in ways that validate your new narrative. This is the freedom, because once the story changes internally, you are no longer bound by deadlines, debts, or fears dictated by previous assumptions. This is the understanding that gratitude is not a reaction to money already possessed, but a declaration of wealth already realized within consciousness. This is the practice, as daily rituals of imagination, affirmation, and focus begin to cement the feeling of abundance into unshakable habit. This is the transformation, where your old money story dissolves quietly but completely, leaving space for a narrative of limitless potential and natural flow. This is the invitation, as you step consciously into the life your subconscious has longed to experience, guided by Neville's insights. This is the moment where you realize that the power to rewrite your financial story has always existed within you, waiting to be recognized, embraced, and lived. Can you imagine a world where every coin, every note, every transaction is simply a reflection of the story you hold within your mind, and where the grand architecture of your financial life has been quietly built, brick by thought-formed brick, over decades without your conscious consent? Picture for a moment how your earliest memories of money, whether a parent's worry, a teacher's warning, or a childhood sense of lack, have been folded into the foundation of the narrative you continue to repeat today. Now consider this. Every anxious thought about bills, every whispered fear about scarcity, every comparison to others who seem to have more, acts like mortar binding a reality that echoes your inner dialogue. Suppose you discover that this story is not permanent, that the very bricks you have been living behind can be lifted, reshaped, and replaced with the firm, luminous stone of abundance. Envision a world where your imagination is not idle, but a tool of creation that rearranges circumstances, aligns opportunities, and opens doors that were invisible before. Think of the moment when you realize that your attention is the architect of experience, that the lens through which you view wealth determines the shape, texture, and flow of prosperity in your life. Ask yourself what happens when you feel the satisfaction of financial freedom now, even before a single deposit hits your account, and notice how the mind begins to accept this as your ongoing reality. Consider the possibility that every worry, every "I can't," every story of limitation has only been a rehearsal, performed endlessly until the body and mind accepted it as truth. This is where clarity emerges, showing that wealth is not merely accumulation, but a reflection of your inner state, a mirror held up by the unseen currents of imagination and belief. This is where patience becomes your ally, because shifting a story written over decades requires not force, but consistent, deliberate attention to the feeling of the end. This is how alignment grows, as the subconscious begins to accept new scenarios as already fulfilled, allowing external circumstances to bend toward the new assumption. This is where perception transforms, as you start seeing opportunities previously invisible and recognizing synchronicities that confirm the unseen working on your behalf. This is the subtle magic, revealing that money flows first through consciousness, and that effort alone, without assumption, is blind and unproductive. This is the awakening of discernment, as you distinguish between habitual lack and intentional creation, between fear-driven thoughts and chosen narratives. This is the ripple effect, where each change in inner dialogue gradually alters decisions, relationships, and actions in ways that compound effortlessly. This is the surrender to imagination, where trusting the unseen and feeling its reality replaces striving and anxiety. This is the embodiment of Neville's teaching, that to live in the end is not to wish, but to accept, to feel, and to act as though the story has already been rewritten. This is the subtle shift that begins to magnetize resources, opportunities, and connections without strain. This is the bridge between thought and reality, imagination and manifestation, showing that the story you keep telling is yours to author. This is the moment when the first glimmers of a new financial story emerge, not as theory, but as lived, tangible, unfolding reality. Now consider this. What if the very act of feeling wealthy, of living in the satisfaction of abundance, is the secret key that Neville revealed, and that the moment you inhabit that state fully, the world itself begins to reshape around you? Picture for a moment that every imagined scene, every vivid inner movie where bills are paid, investments grow, and doors of opportunity swing open, is not fantasy, but the blueprint for your actual financial reality. Can you imagine how your body, mind, and emotions begin to align when you cease struggling against circumstances and instead dwell perpetually in the fulfillment of your financial desires? Suppose you discover that the sensation of already having wealth is far more powerful than any action taken in desperation, because the universe responds not to want, but to assumed reality. Envision a world where each day begins with the inner certainty of abundance, where you move through life with the quiet confidence that every need is met and every desire already fulfilled. Think of the moment when you realize that debts, delays, or setbacks are mere illusions, reflections of old stories, fading as you remain anchored in the end. Ask yourself what happens when gratitude and satisfaction are practiced before evidence appears. And notice how this subtle act rearranges circumstances with startling precision. Consider the possibility that your imagination is the true currency of wealth, and that every thought, feeling, and vision deposits energy into your future prosperity. This is where belief is no longer passive, but active, a living instrument crafting the world you inhabit. This is how transformation unfolds, as the gap between imagined wealth and tangible reality narrows, until they are indistinguishable. This is the turning point where your past limitations lose their authority and the assumptions you hold begin commanding events effortlessly. This is where patience merges with certainty, as you allow the unseen to construct the tangible without interference or doubt. This is the rhythm of creation, where inner satisfaction becomes the magnet, and external events are simply echoes of your continued assumption. This is where clarity deepens, showing that the law of assumption is not a trick, but an undeniable principle of consciousness responding to feeling. This is the mastery of state, as you learn to inhabit the end even while circumstances suggest otherwise, trusting that reality must yield to imagination. This is the quiet power of persistent focus, where unwavering attention to fulfillment begins drawing opportunities, money, and relationships like an invisible current. This is the subtlety of Neville's teaching, that wealth exists first as feeling, and all external confirmation follows naturally. This is the first taste of freedom, as you recognize that your money story is entirely self-authored and that every limitation is voluntary until abandoned. This is the awakening of hope tempered with understanding, as you see the infinite potential of assumption realized in every decision, thought, and action. This is where the narrative of lack begins to dissolve, replaced with the living experience of abundance already yours to inhabit. Suppose you discover that every financial disappointment, every missed opportunity, every moment of scarcity you remember has not been a sentence, but a scene that can be rewritten. And that Neville's method allows you to return to those moments and alter them in imagination until their influence fades completely. Picture for a moment that the memory of struggling, of bills unpaid or dreams delayed, is like a film projected in your mind, and that by replaying it with a new ending, you change the subconscious script that governs your present. Can you imagine the liberation that comes from realizing that your past does not dictate your now, and that what once seemed permanent can be reshaped by your inner vision? Consider the possibility that each failure, each regret, each "I can't" that echoes in your thoughts is only a story, and like all stories, it can be revised with conscious intention. This is where imagination becomes surgical, allowing you to replace fear, worry, and limitation with feelings of triumph, satisfaction, and ease. This is how the unseen laws of consciousness respond, aligning outer circumstances to reflect the new narrative you hold within. This is where the subtle art of revision transforms regret into empowerment, showing that the same mind that created scarcity can effortlessly create abundance. This is the awakening to responsibility, as you realize that no one else controls the story you tell yourself about money and success. This is the method of deliberate creation, where you become the editor of your own life, choosing the scenes, the dialogue, and the emotional resonance that will shape your ongoing experience. This is where freedom emerges, because rewriting the past dissolves its grip, allowing present actions to flow from certainty rather than fear. This is the secret of Neville's teaching, that the mind cannot distinguish between vividly imagined reality and what is real, and that by dwelling in revised memories, you change the blueprint of the present. This is how alignment with abundance accelerates, as each consciously corrected scene begins resonating with external outcomes that match your inner vision. This is the bridge from limitation to possibility, where imagination functions as both shield and architect, protecting you from old patterns while constructing new realities. This is the quiet power of assumption made tangible, as you feel the satisfaction of past successes that never actually occurred, but now exist in your inner world. This is the transformative effect on emotions, as guilt, regret, and fear are replaced with confidence, gratitude, and expectation. This is the amplification of creation, because each imagined revision strengthens the magnetic pull of abundance. This is the subtle reinforcement of identity, as you begin seeing yourself as someone who always succeeds, always attracts opportunity, and always experiences financial ease. This is where your story becomes authored rather than inherited, chosen rather than assumed unconsciously. This is the alchemy of consciousness, turning perceived mistakes into fuel for prosperity. This is where the new narrative fully takes root, merging past, present, and future into a continuous flow of abundance already realized. Envision a world where feelings are more valuable than coins, where the emotional resonance you carry determines the flow of wealth and opportunities into your life, and where Neville's teaching reveals that every imagined sensation deposits energy into your reality, like currency into a bank. Picture for a moment that when you feel joy, security, and satisfaction, as though abundance is already yours, the universe responds instantly, orchestrating events to mirror that inner state. Can you imagine how effortless it becomes to attract wealth once the mind stops negotiating with lack and instead vibrates with certainty and fulfillment? Suppose you discover that thoughts alone are powerless without the emotional charge that breathes life into them, and that money flows only to the state of consciousness that expects it, welcomes it, and feels it. This is where imagination becomes the true economy, where your inner sensations are the deposits and withdrawals shaping the tangible world. This is how the law of assumption translates feeling into circumstance, demonstrating that the body, mind, and environment all obey the tone and texture of your inner world. This is where subtle distinctions matter, because fleeting doubts or habitual complaints can silently drain the energy of creation, while sustained feeling multiplies unseen forces in your favor. This is the awakening of awareness, as you notice that ordinary actions are insufficient without the underlying emotional alignment guiding them. This is the turning point, showing that richness is not acquired but inhabited, and that to live in the end is to invest fully in the sensation of wealth before it materializes. This is the discipline of feeling, where daily practice of inner satisfaction overrides old scarcity scripts and rewires the mind for abundance. This is where power shifts, as you recognize that effort without feeling is mere motion, while feeling without effort shapes reality effortlessly. This is how patience becomes magnetic, as the universe orchestrates events in perfect timing to match the interior experience you hold consistently. This is the subtle art of conscious reception, where imagining deposits, not debts, into your life account alters the balance of outcomes. This is where belief deepens, because seeing the unseen and feeling the already present trains the mind to act as though every imagined prosperity is inevitable. This is the refinement of identity, where you become a person who naturally experiences wealth, effortlessly making decisions from the state of already having it. This is where trust in imagination replaces desperation in action, and expectation replaces anxiety in thought. This is the quiet mastery of inner dialogue, where affirmations, reflections, and visualizations carry the weight of reality itself. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as subtle shifts in feeling begin manifesting tangible improvements, validating the power of your internal state. This is the bridge from thought to experience, from imagination to manifestation, where every emotion becomes a tool for creation. This is the awakening to effortless abundance, as you recognize that feeling is not optional, but the currency through which your money story is rewritten, flowing seamlessly into every aspect of your life. Think of the moment when you realize that opportunities are not random, that they are currents flowing invisibly toward those who hold the state of abundance, and that Neville's teaching shows how the mind attuned to wealth magnetizes circumstances that appear as effortless fortune. Picture for a moment that every chance meeting, every unexpected offer, every serendipitous event is a reflection of the inner assumption you maintain about prosperity. Can you imagine how your life begins to change when you no longer chase money or seek validation from external signs, but instead remain anchored in the certainty of fulfillment, allowing circumstances to align themselves? Suppose you discover that by feeling the reality of financial ease first, doors open in ways your conscious mind could never have orchestrated, and that the universe arranges people, events, and resources to match the state you occupy. This is where patience and focus converge, because the currents of opportunity flow unseen, requiring trust and consistency rather than forceful action. This is the turning point, revealing that wealth is not accumulated through struggle, but attracted by maintaining the vibration of already having it. This is how subtle awareness multiplies, as you begin noticing hints, nudges, and coincidences that guide you toward the right paths without effort. This is where surrender meets intention, as you allow the invisible mechanisms of creation to work while holding firm in your inner narrative. This is the method of deliberate alignment, where imagining the end and feeling satisfaction creates a magnetic field for opportunities to appear naturally. This is where expectation replaces anxiety, as you anticipate results with quiet confidence rather than desperate hope. This is the unfolding of faith in action, as every thought and feeling contributes to the orchestration of outcomes beyond your planning. This is where clarity sharpens, showing that the universe responds instantaneously to your sustained emotional state, rearranging events to mirror your assumption. This is the refinement of choice, as you no longer act from lack, but respond fluidly to opportunities that resonate with the story you hold within. This is where subtle miracles appear, as doors you never knew existed swing open with seamless timing. This is the embodiment of Neville's teaching, that creation begins and ends in consciousness, and that outer realities are reflections of internal consistency. This is the awakening to trust, as you see that the more deeply you inhabit abundance, the more effortlessly life bends to your assumption. This is where imagination and reality converge, as thought, feeling, and action form an unbroken chain of creation. This is the quiet assurance that wealth is not earned, begged for, or fought over, but drawn to the state that already possesses it. This is the revelation that the current has always been flowing, and the only missing element was your conscious participation. This is where your new money story begins to ripple outward, touching every decision, connection, and financial circumstance with the ease of inevitable abundance. Ask yourself, what happens when you confront the fear that has silently governed every financial choice, and realize that Neville's method allows you to dissolve it entirely, leaving only clarity, confidence, and expectation in its place. Picture for a moment that fear is not a warning, but a story, repeated so often that your mind accepts it as reality, and that by imagining the end of scarcity, you quietly unwrite its authority over your life. Can you imagine how liberation feels when doubt no longer dictates action, when hesitation fades, and when every decision flows from trust rather than worry? Suppose you discover that scarcity is only compelling because you have given it energy through thought, and that redirecting attention to the sensation of abundance instantly neutralizes its power. This is where courage emerges, because acknowledging the old story without resistance allows the new narrative to take root unopposed. This is the subtle art of inner rewriting, as each imagined instance of financial fulfillment replaces fear with assurance, and every replay of old lack dissolves into the soil of possibility. This is how the mind begins to respond differently, noticing paths, people, and events that would have gone unseen while the story of limitation held sway. This is the turning point, where patience and persistence intersect, showing that fear only persists as long as it is given attention. This is the awakening to deliberate focus, as every fleeting thought becomes an opportunity to reinforce the state of having rather than the story of needing. This is where alignment strengthens, because sustained emotional resonance begins pulling circumstances toward fulfillment with quiet precision. This is the method of conscious assumption, where imagining and feeling the end of scarcity creates momentum invisible to the untrained eye. This is where subtle miracles begin appearing, small at first, unexpected payments, new connections, timely advice, but unmistakably confirming that fear no longer has dominion. This is how confidence grows, as you internalize that nothing outside you can enforce lack, unless the mind consents. This is the refinement of identity, as you begin thinking, acting, and feeling like someone whose abundance is inevitable and effortless. This is the quiet power of mental rehearsal, where imagined successes are more potent than past failures ever were. This is where trust deepens, because the inner state of fulfillment begins to dictate outer experience rather than reacting to circumstance. This is the liberation of energy previously consumed by worry, now available to attract wealth, opportunities, and creativity. This is the bridge from hesitation to inspired action, as fear dissolves and expectation guides every step. This is the confirmation that scarcity was never real, but only a story, and that rewriting it with feeling rewrites the life it once constrained. This is the emergence of a new money story, authored consciously, lived fully, and magnetically reflected in the world around you. Consider the possibility that true wealth emerges only when thought, feeling, and action move as one. And that Neville's teaching shows how inner alignment transforms every choice into a reflection of abundance rather than struggle. Picture for a moment that every act you take, every investment, every conversation, every decision becomes a natural extension of the inner state you maintain, and that when your mind, heart, and body are synchronized in the sensation of already having it, creation becomes effortless. Can you imagine how different your life would feel if actions were no longer frantic attempts to force outcomes, but natural responses to an inner certainty of prosperity? Suppose you discover that the most powerful force in manifestation is the emotional fidelity to the imagined end, which colors perception, guides behavior, and magnetizes results without strain. This is where clarity sharpens, showing that inconsistent thinking or conflicted feelings dilute results, while a unified inner stance multiplies opportunities and outcomes. This is how subtle attention to alignment transforms ordinary choices into steps that carry weight beyond what is seen or calculated. This is where momentum builds, because the law of assumption responds to the consistency of your inner state rather than the intensity of effort. This is the turning point, revealing that success is not a matter of working harder, but of sustaining a state of being that invites wealth to appear naturally. This is the refinement of habit, where daily rituals, decisions, and reflections become tools to reinforce the inner story of abundance, rather than unknowingly feeding scarcity. This is where imagination directs energy, allowing scenarios to unfold that align perfectly with the life you have assumed. This is the embodiment of Neville's principle, where every thought carries weight, every feeling is creative, and every action is calibrated by the inner narrative. This is the proof of invisible alignment, as synchronicities, intuitive guidance, and timely opportunities emerge in ways that defy logical explanation. This is the deepening of trust, as you see that external circumstances bend consistently to the inner state you inhabit. This is the bridge between vision and manifestation, connecting your imagination with tangible results in ways that feel effortless yet undeniable. This is the quiet mastery of consistency, where repeated assumption, feeling, and action converge into a seamless flow of wealth. This is the awakening to natural creation, as you notice how life responds immediately to alignment rather than struggle. This is the revelation that abundance is not reactive but proactive, unfolding in response to the state you embody. This is where old habits of hesitation, doubt, and scattered effort lose their grip, replaced by purposeful, harmonious momentum. This is the confirmation that thought, feeling, and action, when synchronized, form the unbreakable architecture of prosperity. This is the emergence of a life where money flows freely, opportunities are abundant, and every step resonates with the story of wealth you now choose to tell. Envision a world where expectation is not wishful thinking, but a magnetic force that draws wealth, opportunities, and favorable circumstances effortlessly into your life, and where Neville's teaching reveals that the mind aligned with certainty commands reality itself. Picture for a moment how your life would shift if every expectation was not tempered by doubt, hesitation, or fear, but held firmly as an unshakable truth that your desires are already fulfilled. Can you imagine the subtle energy that radiates from a person who truly believes abundance is inevitable, and how it begins influencing events, people, and circumstances without conscious effort? Suppose you discover that expectation acts like a gravitational pull for opportunity, bending the invisible currents of life to match the state you maintain internally. This is where clarity deepens, showing that it is not desire, but assured expectation that fuels manifestation, and that every act of anticipation resonates outward to shape experience. This is how alignment strengthens, as imagining the end with feeling transforms mental energy into a force that attracts coincidences, insights, and resources. This is the turning point, revealing that waiting anxiously for results only obstructs the flow, whereas persistent, confident expectation smooths the path of manifestation. This is the subtle art of sustaining belief, where each moment spent imagining and feeling fulfillment compounds into cumulative power that reshapes external circumstances. This is where imagination becomes directive, guiding the sequence of events and the choices of others without interference or struggle. This is the refinement of focus, as scattered attention dissipates magnetic energy, while concentrated expectation channels creation with precision. This is the proof of the law in action, as previously unseen opportunities emerge naturally, appearing to confirm that the universe is responding to inner certainty. This is the awakening to your own creative authority, showing that outer reality is not arbitrary, but a mirror of your inner assumption. This is where trust flourishes, because the more consistently you maintain expectation, the more tangible evidence flows without effort. This is the bridge between knowing and experiencing, where inner assurance becomes external confirmation in seamless, undeniable ways. This is the quiet mastery of persistence, where repeated acts of imagined fulfillment solidify the reality you wish to inhabit. This is the deepening of identity, as you begin perceiving yourself as someone who naturally commands abundance and effortlessly attracts wealth. This is the momentum of belief, where each day spent dwelling in the end strengthens the magnetic field around your financial life. This is the liberation from fear and doubt, replaced entirely by expectation that carries creative weight. This is the revelation that abundance is not earned or begged for, but magnetically drawn to the mind that assumes it is already present. This is the embodiment of your new money story, where certainty, feeling, and expectation combine to shape a life of effortless prosperity. Now consider this. Every event, every meeting, every unexpected turn in your life is part of a silent orchestration. Neville calls the bridge of incidents, and it appears once you hold the inner state of fulfillment consistently, guiding circumstances to align with your imagined end. Picture for a moment how seemingly random occurrences, an unexpected call, a timely opportunity, a chance conversation, begin arranging themselves in perfect sequence, forming a bridge between your present state and the wealth you assume as already real. Can you imagine the reassurance that comes from noticing these subtle confirmations, as they validate that the unseen world is actively responding to your inner narrative? Suppose you discover that external events are rarely coincidences, but reflections of your sustained feelings, designed to support the unfolding of your assumed reality. This is where clarity deepens, revealing that patience is not passivity, but trust in the unseen currents that move life in harmony with your assumptions. This is the subtle orchestration, where every step, no matter how small, is supported by invisible mechanisms that mirror the state of abundance you inhabit. This is the turning point, showing that as long as you dwell in the end, the universe creates a path of least resistance, connecting your desires to reality without struggle. This is how attention directs experience, because the more vividly you feel the end, the more the bridge of incidents arranges itself effortlessly. This is the proof of Neville's teaching, as unexpected solutions, fortuitous encounters, and timely resources appear precisely when needed. This is the awakening to the invisible order, recognizing that events do not happen randomly, but as reflections of your inner consistency. This is the refinement of trust, as you see life confirming the story you now choose to tell, through patterns, synchronicities, and alignment. This is where expectation and imagination merge, allowing the mind to perceive opportunities and connections that were previously invisible. This is the method of deliberate observation, noticing how circumstances naturally fall into place when you hold the feeling of already having it. This is the subtle power of emotional fidelity, where the steadiness of your inner state directs the unfolding of outer events with uncanny precision. This is the bridge between desire and manifestation, showing that every assumed scenario finds its reflection in the real world when you remain anchored in the end. This is the quiet mastery of creation, as trust and assumption replace worry, doubt, and effort-driven struggle. This is the alignment of timing, circumstance, and opportunity, orchestrated seamlessly by the state of consciousness you maintain. This is the evidence of the law of assumption at work, illustrating that nothing in your financial life unfolds outside the scope of your inner story. This is the expansion of possibility, as each incident, no matter how small, carries the signature of your assumed wealth. This is the continuous flow, where imagination, feeling, and expectation converge to form a bridge that leads unerringly to abundance realized. Envision a life where the consistent practice of dwelling in the feeling of wealth becomes your most powerful tool, and where Neville's teaching shows that repetition of inner satisfaction strengthens the magnetic field of abundance around you. Picture for a moment that every morning, every quiet moment, every thought and reflection is an opportunity to immerse yourself in the state of already having what you desire, and that this inner discipline reshapes the trajectory of your financial reality. Can you imagine how effortless life becomes when your attention is anchored in the end and your actions flow naturally from the certainty of fulfillment rather than desperation or lack? Suppose you discover that consistency is the secret force, as repeated dwelling in abundance overrides old stories, rewiring the subconscious to accept wealth as the default. This is where clarity sharpens, showing that fleeting imagination or occasional visualization is insufficient, but sustained feeling creates an unbroken momentum that manifests externally. This is the refinement of focus, as persistent attention to imagined prosperity gradually aligns thoughts, emotions, and actions with the state of the wealthy mind. This is how the mind becomes a fertile ground where seeds of abundance flourish when watered daily with the certainty of fulfillment. This is the turning point, demonstrating that discipline is not about effort or struggle, but about maintaining fidelity to the assumed state through consistent inner experience. This is the method of living in the end, where the sensation of already having wealth becomes a natural habit rather than a forced exercise. This is where trust deepens, because repeated immersion in the feeling of prosperity trains the subconscious to accept no other reality. This is the subtle power of repetition, as each act of dwelling in abundance reinforces the story you choose to live and the reality that follows. This is the awakening to the invisible scaffolding of success, where consistency shapes not just immediate circumstances, but the very pattern of life itself. This is how alignment strengthens, as external opportunities, resources, and synchronicities naturally respond to the steadiness of your inner state. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as habitual dwelling in wealth manifests tangible results without effort or strain. This is the quiet mastery of presence, where every thought, emotion, and inner image resonates with the energy of fulfilled abundance. This is the reinforcement of identity, as you begin perceiving yourself as someone who naturally attracts prosperity in every aspect of life. This is the bridge from temporary imagination to continuous lived experience, where wealth becomes a constant state rather than an occasional visitor. This is the cultivation of inner richness, where gratitude, satisfaction, and expectation coexist as daily companions. This is the unfolding of effortless creation, as the law of assumption consolidates your inner discipline into visible, measurable outcomes. This is the seamless flow of abundance, as the story you tell yourself becomes the life you now inhabit, fully and without resistance. Picture for a moment that gratitude is not merely a polite response to having, but the conscious declaration that abundance already exists, and that Neville's teaching shows how feeling thankful acts as a bridge between imagination and manifestation. Envision the subtle shift when every expression of appreciation, every moment of recognition, radiates the signal to the universe that your story of wealth is complete and fulfilled. Can you imagine how your internal state transforms when gratitude becomes the language of your consciousness, affirming that lack is only an illusion and abundance is your natural inheritance? Suppose you discover that feeling gratitude for what you have and for what you imagine simultaneously amplifies the magnetic field, drawing more wealth into your life effortlessly. This is where clarity deepens, showing that appreciation is not reactive, but proactive, shaping your financial narrative even before material confirmation appears. This is the subtle power of acknowledgement, as recognizing blessings, opportunities, and resources reinforces the inner story of wealth rather than scarcity. This is the turning point, revealing that the vibration of gratitude accelerates manifestation by aligning emotions, thoughts, and imagination with abundance. This is how consistent appreciation transforms perception, allowing you to notice avenues of wealth previously overlooked or invisible. This is the method of inner attunement, where every act of thankfulness consolidates your identity as someone who naturally dwells in prosperity. This is the refinement of expectation, because gratitude signals to the subconscious that abundance is already present and ongoing. This is where imagination and reality converge, as feelings of gratitude activate the unseen mechanisms that align events, people, and circumstances with your assumed state. This is the awakening to the invisible scaffolding of creation, where the practice of giving thanks becomes a conscious tool for manifesting wealth. This is the bridge from desire to fulfillment, where each acknowledgement acts as a confirmation of the story you are telling yourself. This is the quiet mastery of emotional resonance, as joy, satisfaction, and thankfulness replace fear, doubt, and scarcity. This is the deepening of identity, as you internalize that the feeling of already having is the only true measure of wealth. This is the reinforcement of habit, where daily practice of gratitude ensures the inner state remains consistent and magnetic. This is the subtle influence on external circumstances as opportunities and resources begin appearing in alignment with your appreciation. This is the cultivation of inner richness, where the story of abundance becomes inseparable from the lived experience of every day. This is the continuous flow, as gratitude sustains the momentum of creation, and every financial or personal gain becomes both evidence and extension of the inner state. This is the confirmation that the money story you choose to tell is fully supported by the power of appreciative consciousness, and that abundance is now the natural outcome of your consistent inner alignment. Envision a life where the financial stories inherited from your family, culture, and society no longer dictate your reality, and where Neville's teaching illuminates the way to consciously break the cycles of scarcity that have silently persisted for generations. Picture for a moment how many of your beliefs about money, fears, doubts, and limitations were passed down unconsciously, forming a subconscious blueprint that shaped every choice and outcome. Can you imagine the freedom that comes from realizing that these inherited patterns are not truths, but merely stories you have absorbed and repeated without awareness? Suppose you discover that by assuming the feeling of abundance and living in the end of wealth, you can erase these old scripts from your subconscious, replacing them with a narrative of empowerment and limitless potential. This is where clarity emerges, showing that wealth is not only personal but generational, and that rewriting your story can ripple forward, transforming the financial consciousness of those who come after you. This is the subtle power of conscious assumption, as every imagined scenario of success neutralizes the weight of ancestral fear and scarcity. This is the turning point, where inner discipline and deliberate focus dissolve old limiting beliefs, allowing the magnetic force of abundance to take hold. This is how alignment deepens, because every decision, thought, and emotional resonance now reflects the new story rather than inherited constraints. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as consistent dwelling in the end and feeling the reality of wealth begins manifesting outcomes that defy old family patterns. This is the awakening to responsibility, showing that your financial reality is authored by your own assumptions rather than the subconscious scripts of the past. This is the refinement of identity, as you begin seeing yourself not as a product of limitation, but as a creator of prosperity for yourself and those connected to you. This is where trust strengthens, because the more deeply you inhabit abundance, the more consistently it appears externally. This is the bridge between freedom and inheritance, where conscious imagination severs the chains of scarcity and opens a new line of opportunity. This is the quiet mastery of breaking cycles, as every imagined scene of financial ease weakens the pull of ancestral fear. This is the reinforcement of belief, as daily practice in feeling wealth solidifies your story against old narratives. This is the cultivation of empowerment, where the energy previously tied to lack is redirected into creative, abundant pursuits. This is the flow of legacy, as your rewritten story begins influencing others subtly through presence, mindset, and example. This is the alignment of past, present, and future, showing that money stories are not fixed, but fluid, responsive to conscious design. This is the moment when the inherited story of limitation dissolves, replaced by a living, evolving narrative of endless possibility and natural abundance. Think of the moment when you realize that the subconscious mind is the silent author of your financial story, crafting outcomes from thoughts, beliefs, and emotions you may not even notice, and that Neville's teaching reveals how conscious intervention can rewrite this authoring. Picture for a moment how every habitual worry, every internalized limitation, and every repeated mental image of lack has been quietly scripting the reality you experience without your conscious consent. Can you imagine the liberation that comes from discovering you are not powerless, but equipped with the ability to become the editor, director, and lead actor in the unfolding narrative of wealth? Suppose you discover that the mind responds more strongly to imagined reality than to physical evidence, making subconscious alignment the most potent tool for creating abundance. This is where clarity emerges, showing that money is first a state of consciousness, and external proof follows only as a reflection of internal fidelity. This is the subtle power of repetition, as consistent mental rehearsal of financial success rewires the subconscious and reshapes the energetic blueprint of your life. This is the turning point, revealing that no external effort can match the effect of an aligned, confident inner state sustained over time. This is how awareness deepens, because noticing habitual thought patterns allows you to consciously replace scarcity with assumption and abundance. This is the method of deliberate influence, where imagining financial fulfillment with feeling becomes the guiding force behind every choice and opportunity. This is where alignment strengthens, as subconscious belief begins harmonizing with conscious intention, creating seamless manifestation. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as imagined scenarios begin producing tangible results in ways that confirm the power of inner authorship. This is the awakening to responsibility, showing that the mind cannot escape its role in creating your financial reality, and that mastery comes from conscious stewardship. This is the refinement of identity, as you begin to see yourself as the architect of wealth rather than a passive observer of circumstance. This is where trust consolidates, because repeated assumption trains the subconscious to operate as a faithful partner in creation. This is the bridge between imagination and reality, showing that your inner stories are the foundation upon which your financial life is built. This is the quiet mastery of attention, where focused mental activity shapes outcomes more reliably than frantic external effort. This is the cultivation of inner authority, as you claim ownership over every narrative, belief, and assumption that governs abundance. This is the continuous reinforcement of prosperity, where subconscious alignment ensures that wealth flows naturally without resistance. This is the awakening to the true author within, as every thought, feeling, and imagined scene becomes an instrument for shaping the life you desire. This is the moment when the silent author of limitation is replaced with a conscious creator of infinite possibility and unstoppable abundance. Picture for a moment that imagination is not a fleeting escape, but the architect of reality itself, and that Neville's teaching reveals persistent imagination as the engine that drives wealth into tangible existence. Envision the scenes you replay in your mind daily, the vivid images of financial freedom, success, and opportunity as invisible forces shaping every decision, every action, and every event around you. Can you imagine the subtle but undeniable shift when imagination is practiced consistently, sustained with feeling, and allowed to saturate your consciousness until it becomes your dominant reality? Suppose you discover that repeated mental rehearsal of abundance not only overrides old scarcity scripts, but also magnetizes real-world events that correspond with your inner state. This is where clarity emerges, showing that imagination is more powerful than effort or struggle, because the subconscious cannot distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and physical reality. This is the turning point, revealing that consistency in imagining the desired end is the ultimate secret to effortless manifestation. This is how alignment deepens, as imagination fused with emotion anchors your consciousness in the state of already having what you desire. This is the subtle mastery of scenario building, where each mental scene becomes a blueprint for real-life events, guiding circumstances to reflect your chosen story. This is where trust strengthens, because the persistent rehearsal of abundance signals to the universe that this reality is not tentative, but certain. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as imagined wealth begins to manifest externally in ways that confirm the unseen is actively responding. This is the refinement of focus, where scattered thoughts are replaced with deliberate, intentional creation through sustained mental imagery. This is the awakening to your inner power, as the mind becomes both the seedbed and the magnet for prosperity. This is the quiet discipline of feeling, where imagination without resistance or doubt shapes both identity and circumstance. This is the reinforcement of assumption, as repeated mental and emotional engagement strengthens the subconscious conviction of abundance. This is how small, consistent imaginative acts accumulate into unstoppable momentum, subtly bending events, people, and opportunities toward your desired outcome. This is the bridge between intention and manifestation, where imagination becomes the conduit connecting unseen possibilities to tangible reality. This is the cultivation of patience, knowing that persistent alignment yields results in perfect timing. This is the continuous creation of a life that mirrors the richness of your inner scenes, where abundance is no longer hypothetical but lived daily. This is the moment when imagination solidifies into unshakable reality, and every financial dream becomes an inevitable reflection of your inner story. This is the unfolding of a life authored consciously, sustained by persistent imagination, and resonating fully with wealth already assumed. Envision a reality where wealth flows effortlessly because you have learned the subtle art of non-resistance, and where Neville's teaching reveals that surrendering to the feeling of already having removes the blocks that struggle and doubt create. Picture for a moment that every attempt to force, push, or control circumstances actually stiffens the barriers to abundance, while releasing tension and trusting the unseen allows opportunities to arrive naturally. Can you imagine the relief and freedom that comes from letting go of frantic striving and instead dwelling in the quiet confidence of fulfillment? Suppose you discover that non-resistance is not passive resignation, but a deliberate choice to align emotionally and mentally with the state of already having. This is where clarity emerges, showing that tension, anxiety, and impatience are invisible obstacles that delay manifestation, while relaxed expectation accelerates it. This is the turning point, revealing that the universe cooperates most fully when you stop wrestling with reality and begin cooperating with imagination. This is how alignment strengthens, as each moment spent in ease, trust, and satisfaction tunes your inner state to attract corresponding external outcomes. This is the refinement of focus, where effort is replaced by deliberate feeling, and every action flows from the certainty of fulfillment rather than fear of lack. This is where subtle miracles begin to appear, small at first, timely guidance, unexpected resources, synchronistic encounters, but unmistakably confirming that non-resistance is creating space for abundance. This is the awakening to your own creative authority as you realize that the path of least resistance is the most powerful route to wealth. This is the bridge between inner assumption and outer reality, showing that the absence of struggle allows invisible currents to carry your desires into manifestation. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as letting go of resistance aligns your energy with abundance in ways that effort alone cannot achieve. This is the cultivation of patience, as trust in the unseen ensures that your imagined wealth unfolds in perfect timing. This is the continuous reinforcement of prosperity, where the more you embody ease, the more consistently circumstances mirror your internal state. This is the refinement of identity, as you begin seeing yourself as someone who naturally attracts abundance without forcing outcomes. This is the method of quiet mastery, where inner calm becomes the most potent form of action. This is the deepening of alignment, as thoughts, emotions, and actions move harmoniously with the state of having. This is the subtle yet powerful transformation of resistance into magnetic attraction, as every moment of inner ease strengthens the flow of wealth. This is the emergence of effortless creation, where non-resistance becomes the invisible engine driving your financial story. This is the full embodiment of the principle that abundance is drawn to those who allow, trust, and assume it fully, letting the universe work as its own perfect mechanism. Ask yourself, what happens when every word you speak to yourself about money carries the weight of creation, and how Neville's teaching illuminates that inner dialogue is the invisible script shaping your financial reality. Picture for a moment that each thought, self-comment, or mental remark about wealth either reinforces abundance or perpetuates scarcity, and that the subtlety of this inner conversation governs the trajectory of your life more than external events. Can you imagine the power of consistently framing your internal speech in the language of fulfillment, certainty, and ease, where even passing thoughts echo the story of already having? Suppose you discover that the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between imagined dialogue and reality, making your inner speech a tool as potent as visualization itself. This is where clarity emerges, showing that negative, doubtful, or fearful self-talk quietly erodes the energy of creation, while affirming, constructive, and wealth-oriented dialogue builds magnetic momentum. This is the turning point, revealing that mastery of inner language accelerates manifestation by harmonizing thought, feeling, and subconscious expectation. This is how alignment strengthens, as each internally spoken phrase reinforces the assumption of abundance, creating a continuous feedback loop between imagination and experience. This is the refinement of focus, where conscious attention to mental dialogue ensures that every statement internally aligns with the story of prosperity you choose to live. This is where subtle miracles appear, as synchronicities, resources, and timely opportunities reflect the consistency of your inner language. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as a disciplined inner dialogue gradually rewires habitual thinking, dissolving scarcity while amplifying abundance. This is the awakening to self-authorship, as you realize that the most immediate and influential script of wealth is written in your mind. This is the bridge between imagination and reality, where words not spoken aloud nonetheless construct the architecture of your financial life. This is the cultivation of precision, as you learn to notice, edit, and direct every internal remark toward the state of having. This is the quiet mastery of thought, where inner speech becomes the instrument of manifestation rather than a passive echo of past conditioning. This is the deepening of trust, as consistent alignment between dialogue and assumption draws external confirmation naturally. This is the method of conscious reinforcement, where repeated internal storytelling strengthens the subconscious conviction of prosperity. This is the continuous shaping of reality, where wealth flows in alignment with the mental narrative you sustain. This is the subtle power of habitual inner dialogue, as each phrase carries creative weight and shapes both identity and circumstance. This is the emergence of a life authored from within, where your money story is consciously spoken, felt, and manifested seamlessly in every external detail. Envision a world where every moment is saturated with the atmosphere of abundance. And Neville's teaching reveals that living as if wealth already surrounds you transforms not only circumstances but the very energy you radiate. Picture for a moment that your environment, interactions, and opportunities begin to shift naturally when your inner state carries the unmistakable signature of prosperity, drawing experiences that resonate with this frequency. Can you imagine how your life changes when the air you breathe, the thoughts you think, and the feelings you hold are all aligned with the certainty of having enough and more than enough? Suppose you discover that abundance is contagious, and that by inhabiting this atmosphere internally, every choice and every encounter begins to echo the story of wealth you now embrace. This is where clarity emerges, showing that your state of consciousness acts as a gravitational field, attracting circumstances, people, and resources that match the inner signature of plenty. This is the subtle power of immersion, as fully experiencing the feeling of abundance allows you to live beyond fear, lack, or hesitation. This is the turning point, revealing that external wealth is merely a reflection of the consistent internal atmosphere you maintain. This is how alignment strengthens, as sustained resonance with prosperity rewrites habitual expectations and magnetizes opportunities with seamless timing. This is the refinement of perception, as you begin to notice gifts, insights, and pathways previously invisible under the veil of scarcity. This is where trust deepens, because the more fully you embody the energy of abundance, the more effortless and natural your manifestations become. This is the bridge between imagination and lived experience, where dwelling in the end creates an environment already rich with possibilities. This is the proof of Neville's principle, as your outer world begins confirming the internal story through synchronicities, financial gains, and supportive circumstances. This is the awakening to the subtle art of vibrational influence, showing that your inner state sets the stage for everything you experience. This is the cultivation of consistency, as each day spent in the atmosphere of abundance strengthens the momentum of manifestation. This is the quiet mastery of resonance, where your energy naturally harmonizes with wealth without strain or effort. This is the reinforcement of identity, as you begin to perceive yourself as someone for whom abundance is not an aspiration, but a lived reality. This is the method of invisible magnetism, where internal saturation draws external confirmation with perfect precision. This is the continuous flow of creation, where every thought, feeling, and interaction amplifies the story of wealth you hold. This is the emergence of effortless attraction, as the atmosphere of abundance becomes your natural state and every circumstance aligns seamlessly with the inner certainty of prosperity. Now consider this. The final proof of Neville's teaching is not merely in thoughts, feelings, or imagination, but in living as the embodiment of wealth itself, where every gesture, decision, and interaction reflects the state of already having. Picture for a moment how your posture, speech, and presence change when you inhabit the identity of someone who is naturally abundant, radiating confidence, ease, and certainty in every aspect of life. Can you imagine the subtle influence this embodiment has on circumstances, drawing resources, opportunities, and connections without conscious effort as the world responds to the authority of your inner state? Suppose you discover that wealth is not a goal to chase, but a persona to inhabit, where thinking, feeling, and acting as if abundance is real aligns every external outcome with your internal story. This is where clarity deepens, showing that identity precedes experience, and that the life you now live externally is a mirror of the state you consistently maintain internally. This is the turning point, revealing that persistence in embodying wealth neutralizes old scarcity patterns and programs your subconscious to act in harmony with abundance. This is how alignment strengthens as habits, choices, and daily routines begin flowing effortlessly from the state of already having. This is the subtle power of presence, as those around you unconsciously mirror your confidence, creating an environment supportive of financial expansion. This is the refinement of perception, noticing opportunities, resources, and solutions that previously went unseen because your identity now interprets the world through the lens of abundance. This is the bridge between imagination and reality, as embodying wealth collapses the gap between the unseen and the seen, making prosperity inevitable. This is the awakening to full authorship, as your internal and external worlds merge into a seamless reflection of assumed wealth. This is the proof of Neville's principle, where the consistent practice of living as someone who already possesses abundance manifests opportunities, fortune, and success with effortless timing. This is the cultivation of mastery, where each thought, feeling, and action reinforces the identity of a naturally wealthy individual. This is the quiet authority of inner state, where external circumstances no longer dictate your sense of security or success. This is the continuous reinforcement of assumption, as living the end becomes a habitual embodied experience rather than a conscious exercise. This is the deepening of trust, knowing that wealth flows naturally to those who are consistent in their inner state. This is the manifestation of your money story, fully aligned, uninterrupted, and self-sustaining. This is the refinement of life itself, as every facet of your existence begins reflecting the abundance you hold internally. This is the moment when imagining, feeling, and living in harmony with wealth converge into unstoppable creation. This is the emergence of effortless prosperity, where abundance is no longer a distant goal, but the natural rhythm of your life. Consider the possibility that your entire financial reality has been transformed, and that Neville's teaching shows how the story you tell yourself now defines every future experience, dissolving old scarcity into effortless abundance. Picture for a moment that every thought, feeling, and imagined scenario has converged into a coherent, unstoppable narrative of wealth, and that life itself has become a reflection of the state you consistently maintain. Can you imagine the liberation that comes from knowing the old stories of struggle, limitation, and lack no longer hold any power over you, and that every circumstance now responds seamlessly to your inner assumption of abundance? Suppose you discover that this new money story is not a temporary phase, but a permanent rewrite of identity, subconscious patterns, and habitual expectation, creating a life where prosperity is natural, inevitable, and continuous. This is where clarity shines, revealing that every section of your journey, from imagination to expectation, from gratitude to embodiment, has woven together a tapestry of wealth fully anchored within you. This is the subtle proof of Neville's principle, as synchronicities, opportunities, and financial flow now appear as natural extensions of your inner state rather than as external achievements to be earned. This is the turning point, where every element of your money story, the bridge of incidents, persistent imagination, non-resistance, subconscious authorship, and inner dialogue, integrates into a seamless, living reality. This is how alignment solidifies, as your thoughts, emotions, actions, and environment now resonate in perfect harmony with the narrative of abundance. This is the refinement of identity, as you step fully into the version of yourself who knows that wealth is already yours, unshakable and ever-expanding. This is the proof of mastery, as external circumstances now mirror internal conviction with stunning accuracy, providing evidence without the need for struggle or doubt. This is the awakening to infinite possibility, showing that money, opportunity, and success are not finite, but continuously drawn to your assumed state. This is the subtle power of conscious authorship, where every decision, encounter, and opportunity is filtered through the lens of wealth already realized. This is the cultivation of effortless creation, as imagination, feeling, expectation, and embodiment now function as a single, unified instrument. This is the bridge between the old money story and the new, showing that transformation is complete when the inner state dictates reality. This is the quiet mastery of presence, where abundance is lived moment to moment, fear seamlessly integrated into every facet of life. This is the continuous flow of prosperity, as the law of assumption ensures that your financial reality unfolds in perfect alignment with your inner story. This is the full embodiment of Neville's teaching, where the mind, heart, and actions are synchronized in the certainty of wealth. This is the emergence of a life authored consciously, joyfully, and abundantly, where every circumstance confirms the story you now choose. This is the final revelation. The money story you keep telling has been rewritten. And from this moment onward, it shapes your life as effortlessly, consistently, and richly as you have always imagined.